Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to pick up stuff in Unity. Let's review what I already have set up in this scene. I have our player, which just has a box collider, a rigid body 2D, and a character controller, and all he can do is move left and right. I also have this coin and sword prefab, and if I drag them into the scene, you'll see they just look like regular items. There's nothing special going on, it's just a sprite. If we have this object in our scene that we want to pick up, let's talk about a few ways we could handle this and then how we can make it better. The first step is to know if we're colliding with it, so we're going to need to add some sort of collider 2D to our object. For the coin, I'll add a circle collider 2D. On whatever collider you use, make sure to set isTrigger to true. This way your player collider can walk right through it. When our character collider intersects with the coin's trigger, this fires off an onTrigger enter 2D event, which can be called in script. So let's right click on our assets folder and create a new C# script, and we'll call this pickup. We'll attach it to our coin prefab, which will then reflect to all instances of this prefab, and we'll open that script up. Let's get rid of start and update, and like I mentioned before, what we want to say is void onTrigger enter 2D. So what's actually happening here? It's saying that this game object that this script's attached to has a collider with trigger set to true, and this function gets called when the collider first intersects with something. And this collision argument is actually the other collider it interacted with. So if this was on the coin, this other collider 2D would be my player's collider. But it could also be something else, so we need to verify that it actually is the player. And there's a variety of different ways you can go about this. The most common way is to say if the collision.GameObject, so this would be the player game object, has a tag of player. When you select an object in the editor, you have a tag field, and so we could actually set player to player. Tags are a great way of identifying at a high level what the object is. The real risk with this is you just need to make sure you set your tags and that multiple objects could have the same tag, so just take note of that. At this point though, in order for us to do stuff, I think we need to make a new script for our player object to handle picking up this item. So I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to right click and create a new C# script. For your game, you'll have to set up what makes sense for you. Some people do a game manager, but I'm going to make a player manager. It could also be like an inventory or something like that. And I'll attach it to my player prefab. And so for the time being, I don't think we need start and update. And we need a variable just to prove this is working eventually. So I'll make a public int coin count. And so now we can actually make a method that gets called within our pickup script. And so our doStuff will be passing in this object to this pickup item method. So we'll say public void pickup item. And we'll just say coin count plus plus. Don't copy this if you're following along. We're going to make this a lot better in a bit. Let me illustrate how we can make this more generic and much better. So back in our pickup script, instead of checking by tag, what we can say is player manager equals collision.getComponent of type player manager. And we could say if manager, then manager.pickupitem. And why we're doing this instead is just because we collide with the player, we need to make sure that the player actually has a player manager script attached before we can call the method. So this way we're checking to make sure the manager exists first. When we hit play, our coin count is set to 0. Now when we go to pick up our coin, it disappears and our coin count increases, which is great. But what happens when we introduce another item type, like a sword? We'll pick up the coin and our count will increase as it should, but when we pick up the sword, our count increases as well, which is weird and not what we want. This is where we'll have to reanalyze how we're implementing our pickup item method and try to make it more generic. And remember earlier how I said tags are a good way of identifying at a high level what objects are? I think we can utilize tags in an interesting way. So I'm going to make a couple tags. I'm going to say currency and equipment. And I'll give the coin prefab a currency tag and the sword prefab an equipment tag. In our pickup script, instead of just calling pickup item, we'll call pickup item and we'll pass in game object. So this would be the coin. And in pickup item, we'll now take a game object. Depending on what the tag is, we want to switch what we're doing, which is the perfect use case for a switch statement. So we'll say switch object.tag. We can say case in strings currency, then coin count plus plus, and break. A switch statement ends with a default statement, so we can say default, and we can just break at the end as well. So we're switching on the object's tag, and if it's not currency, then we'll go to the default. Otherwise, we'll do whatever the currency bracket says to do. And so now in our play mode, when we pick up a coin, we'll notice the coin count goes up. But when we walk over the sword, it deletes, but nothing happens. Which is better, but not quite right. For cases we don't know how to handle, we should be logging some kind of warning for the developer to see and know we need to implement something. So we can say debug.logWarning, And here's some new C# syntax for you. If you say $sign and string quotations, if you have the $sign before the string quotations, you can open up brackets and pass in variables. So we could say warning, no handler implemented for tag, the tag. And so when we hit our sword, we get this warning, no handler implemented for tag equipment. But we still have a problem. We weren't able to pick up the sword object, and yet we still deleted it. So we need a way to check for this. And it's actually really easy. We just need to know if we were successful in picking up the item. So what we can say is bool picked up equals in our pickup script. And in our player manager, instead of public void, we can actually return a bool. And so for our currency case, after we increment our coin count, we can return true. And after we log our warning, we can return false. We don't need our break statements anymore. So back in our pickup script, we only want to destroy our GameObject if we successfully picked up the item. So we'll say if picked up, then we'll destroy the object. So now we pick up the coin, it disappears, we move over the sword, we don't pick it up, and we get an error message saying we should implement something for equipment. This type of functionality is great for the game because it doesn't break anything, but it lets us know that we didn't implement something, which is definitely the lesser of two evils. At this point we have the guts of the system in place, so it's all about fleshing it out and making it look pretty. First thing we should do is get rid of these magic strings and create some sort of utility class where we have constants. Encapsulating this into a variable can really help in the long run. And while you'll have to maintain this list, it's better to do it in one place than everywhere this tag could be referenced. In our pickup script, we could add an audio clip and a game object that we use as a pickup effect. And we could encapsulate where we destroy our game object into a remove item function. We basically just want to play the sound effect and generate the pickup effect. In our sword, we could add some sound, and then I added a particle effect. When we pick up the coin in the sword, each one should sound and look a little different. Just gives us versatility there. We can now flesh out our remaining switch cases, whether it's equipment or potions or an upgrade, something along those lines. Each one can have their own distinct handler, and maybe the player doesn't handle it, maybe it hands it off to a game manager, maybe it hands it off to an inventory system. You'll have to figure that out in your project, but this will give you the tools to get started. And when all is said and done, you finally can pick up a bunch of different items in your game. So let's give it a shot and see what we have. Coins, classic. Always need those. Same with swords, gotta have some sort of weapon, you know what I'm saying? Wow, that is a large backpack, but alright, gotta pick that one up. Gotta have the feather. Everybody wants one, feathers are great, really valuable item. Is that a random pill on the ground? Don't mind if I do. Oh my god, it's a naval mine. I've always wanted one of those. Gotta pick that up. Hopes and dreams? Oh, okay, very funny guys, haha. Who did this?